Stop everything, because I just learned that Stockholm Syndrome is based off of no science whatsoever, and it's a total and complete lie. So before I get into this, everything that I'm reading to you today is from this book, See What You Made Me Do, and it's from Jess Hill, and it's about the dangers of domestic abuse and the things that we are explaining away and refusing to see and that we're ignoring and is harmful to people who are victims. So towards the second half of the book, Jess brings up how Stockholm Syndrome keeps being linked to domestic abuse, and that we are using the traditional example, which is that a person falls in love with their captor, when really domestic abuse victims are often financially dependent on their abusers, which is why they don't leave. There's more reasons, but we're going to get into why Stockholm Syndrome is bullshit. Okay, so forgive me, Swedish people, because I'm going to butcher some names. This is Niels Bergerath, and he's the psychiatrist who came up with the term Stockholm Syndrome. And the weird thing about it is that he diagnosed her with this without ever meeting her or speaking to her ever. Even worse, during the Swedish bank heist that inspired the syndrome, he was the leading psychiatrist that the police had for the response to the robbery. His behavior is the reason why the victim didn't trust the police. This is Kristen Enmark, and in August of 1973, she worked in a bank in Norrmalmstorg. A man by the name of Jan Olsen walked into the bank and took her and 3 other bank tellers hostage. It is a complete media circus. Swedish people have never experienced this before, neither had the police. There's no training in hostage negotiation. So all they have is Nils telling them what to do. And very early on, he completely messes up. So they're like looking through the windows with high power, rifles and things like that. And they incorrectly identify Olsen. The police figure out that it is him though, and they go and they get his younger brother. And they send the younger brother into the bank to negotiate with Niels Bergerath. It all goes bad, and Nils gets shot at. Olsen is becoming more and more agitated, which is problematic for the people who are currently tied up. Olsen had a partner who was named Clark Olofsson, and Olofsson was definitely more calm and less, intense. Olofsson actually talked to all of the women who were being kidnapped and told them, listen, I'm going to make sure that Jan doesn't hurt you. He means a lot to me. I don't want any of us to get hurt. And Kristen said that of all of the people involved in this entire situation, Clark Olofsson is the only one who made her feel secure. At one point, Kristen gets on the radio and she asks to speak to Nils, and he denies her. So then she calls a local radio station and she goes off. The police are playing with our lives, and then they don't even want to talk to me. Who is the one who will die if anything happens? Realizing the police aren't going to do anything, she actually calls the Prime Minister of Sweden. So Kristen the badass is contacting the Prime Minister, Olof Palme, and she's like, listen, just please come rescue us. Let us leave the bank with Olsen and Olofsson. She says to him, I am not desperate. They haven't done a thing to us. On the contrary, they've actually been very nice. But Olaf, what I'm scared of is that the police will attack us when we try and leave and cause us to die. Palme says, absolutely not. We're not going to give in to the demands of criminals. And then Kristen says that the Prime Minister told her, well, Kristen, you can't get out of the bank. You'll have to content yourself that you will have died at your post. And Kristen says she told him, I don't want to be a dead hero. Finally, the police tear gas the bank and come in and arrest Jan Erik Olsen. And then in this very weird macho display, they walk Olsen and Olofsson up and down the street in front of the bank so that all of the people who are watching, the media and the people who've come out can cheer and I guess watch. Kristen doesn't like this weird display, and she's just like, really? This is what we're doing? EMTs come in and they ask her to lie on a stretcher, and she's just like, listen, I walked in here 6.5 days ago. I'm walking out. They forced her to get on a stretcher. And ultimately they sent her to the hospital to just look over, While she's in the hospital, she is on the radio criticizing the police and specifically naming Niels Bergerath as the reason why. So in response, the local media contacted Nils, and they were like, what do you have to say about the fact that one of the victims has all this to say about you? And on the spot, he completely dismisses her, and he says she has Norrmalmstorg syndrome, which he later changed to Stockholm Syndrome. He says that her fear of the police was completely irrational and that she must feel some kind of emotional or sexual attraction to her captors. I'm sure you can guess the media thought that this was a great answer. And in fact, several different papers said that Kristen didn't appear to be traumatized enough. One paper said, "It's hard to admit, but the words that come to mind to describe her condition are fresh and alert." Apparently, not being traumatized was a sign that she was mentally ill. 4 years after that, she was interviewed again, and she was pretty indignant. She said, "Of course I was afraid of the police. What's so strange about that? Is it strange that one is afraid of those who are all around in parks, on roofs, behind corners, in armored vests, helmets, and weapons ready to shoot?" In 2008, specialists reviewed the literature on Stockholm Syndrome and determined that most diagnoses are made by the media. It's poorly researched and that there is barely any academic research on it at all. That most psychiatrists can't even agree on what it is, let alone how to diagnose it. Essentially, this was a myth invented to discredit a victim of violence. This is Kristen today with a picture of herself in the hospital after the attack. And this is her story.